Welcome to another deep dive. Looks like we're really getting into some fascinating stuff about women, beauty, and power in the 21st century. We've got personal stories and cultural critiques, really the whole spectrum.
Yeah, it's amazing how much there is to unpack about these topics, and the sources you've chosen really do get to the heart of it all, especially those contradictions women are facing today.
That's right. One of the books you sent over, Kiss My Tiara by Susan Jane Gilman, that's a real gem. It's funny, insightful, and she doesn't hold back at all.
Gilman. It seems like she has this ability to talk about some really tough subjects with a good dose of humor, which I think is so important. Humor can be such a great way to open up those difficult conversations.
Totally. No sugarcoating here, so get ready for some straight talk, and it might make you laugh 1 minute and then have you seriously thinking the next.
I'm definitely ready for that kind of honesty. What are some of the key things she digs into?
Well, she dives right into beauty and self-image, and she starts with something that just blew me away. Even Cindy Crawford, the supermodel, gets digitally altered. That makes you wonder, if even she doesn't meet the ideal, then who does?
It's crazy, right? It shows just how widespread this whole thing is, how much manipulation is really going on. The media and the beauty industry, they're masters at making women feel like they're not enough. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry built on selling us solutions to problems that they created in the first place.
Exactly. And Gilman shares this anecdote from Newsweek that some women are spending their life savings on liposuction instead of a down payment on a house. Can you imagine? Would you rather have a perfect body or a place to live? It just makes you think about priorities.
It's a stark example of just how warped things can get. All this pressure to fit into this idealized image, and it can lead to these extreme choices. We're almost being trained to value physical perfection over, well, everything else, even our financial security.
And Gilman's point is that none of that guarantees happiness. She says that real beauty comes from confidence and accepting yourself, not from chasing some external ideal, especially an ideal that doesn't even exist.
I couldn't agree more. Building inner strength and self-love, those are so much more empowering and sustainable than striving for some unattainable image. It's about recognizing that your worth isn't tied to how you look.
Right. She talks about doing a mental makeover, and one thing she says is to remember that even those perfect-looking celebrities, they have insecurities and problems just like everyone else.
It's so easy to put celebrities on a pedestal and forget they're human too. They struggle with the same things we all do. It's a good reminder to focus on our own growth and self-acceptance instead of comparing ourselves to others.
Absolutely. Now, another thing Gilman tackles is the whole complicated relationship we have with food, dieting, and power. You know how for women, ordering dessert can feel like you're confessing to something? Like you have to justify or apologize for enjoying it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to those messages that tell us being thin equals being good, especially for women. And we see those messages everywhere. So it makes sense that there's all this guilt and shame around food.
Yeah. And Gilman has this idea that I think you'll find interesting. She says, dieting displaces ambition. Imagine if instead of obsessing over calories, you channeled that energy into your career, your creative projects, anything you've been putting off.
Wow. Think about how much mental energy dieting takes up. I mean, is that really how we want to spend our time and energy? What could we accomplish if we weren't constantly battling with our bodies? It's almost like we're being encouraged to shrink ourselves physically and mentally.
Exactly. And she playfully suggests we should, eat ice cream. After all, it is a product of female cows.
I love that. It's such a fun way to challenge that restrictive mindset around food and just encourage women to actually enjoy what they eat. Food can be a source of nourishment and pleasure, right? Without all the guilt and shame.
It's about reclaiming our power, giving ourselves permission to enjoy things without feeling bad about it. And that's a big part of accepting ourselves.
Right. Exactly. Food shouldn't be a battleground. It should be something we enjoy.
So true. Okay, now Gilman goes into the always interesting topic of sex, relationships, and honesty. She tells this funny story about a woman asking her doctor, "You mean down there, like Perth?"
Hmm.
It just shows how uncomfortable we still are talking openly about female sexuality.
Oh, absolutely. It's like there's still this taboo around female anatomy and pleasure. And it speaks to how much we need more open and honest conversations about sex and sexuality without all that shame and judgment.
Gilman argues that society only really accepts certain reasons for women to have sex,
Yeah.
love and babies. But what about all the other reasons? Aren't we allowed to be complex individuals with different desires?
It's such a limited and outdated view of female sexuality. I think Gilman does a great job challenging that and presenting a more realistic perspective. It's not black and white.
Exactly. She outlines this whole spectrum of motivations for women having sex. Curiosity, boredom, pleasure, wanting to escape, even power dynamics.
It's about acknowledging that female sexuality is complex and multifaceted, and there's no single explanation for it, just like with men.
She really emphasizes that.
Yeah.
And she also talks about the need for open communication about sex and relationships, encouraging women to be honest with themselves and their partners about what they want.
Honesty and self-awareness, those are essential for any healthy and fulfilling relationship.
Couldn't agree more. Now, Gilman doesn't shy away from marriage either. She starts by sharing how she was obsessed with being a bride. As a kid, didn't even need a groom. Remember dreaming about that white dress.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, that was a big one. All those fairy tales we grow up with, they set us up for some pretty unrealistic expectations about what marriage is really like.
Totally. And she hilariously dismantles those fairy tales. She reimagines Cinderella's happily ever after, but with all the real-life stuff. In-laws, midlife crises, you name it.
It's such a clever way to expose the myth of the perfect marriage. It's like, wake up, people. Marriage is not a fairy tale. And it really highlights how important it is to choose marriage for the right reasons, not just to follow some cultural script.
Right. Okay, and then she seamlessly transitions into talking about lesbian weddings, asking why they should be any different. Love is love, right?
Absolutely. It's about challenging that very narrow view of marriage and advocating for equal rights for same-sex couples.
And she makes the point that the challenges and joys of any long-term relationship, love, commitment, compromise, they're all part of the deal, regardless of sexual orientation.
Right, that's important to remember. And it makes me think of something else Gilman said. Straight people might actually envy gay couples. Now that's an interesting statement.
It is. What do you think she means by that?
Well, she argues that gay couples often have a more balanced dynamic because they're not stuck in those traditional gender roles. They have more freedom to define their roles and responsibilities based on who they are, not on some outdated societal expectations.
I see what she's saying. Maybe straight couples could learn something from that. Maybe those rigid roles are actually holding us back.
It's something to think about. Maybe by looking outside those traditional boundaries, we can get some fresh insights into how to build more fulfilling and equitable relationships.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to unpack there. And we've only just scratched the surface of all the insights Gilman has to offer in Kiss My Tiara. And it's not just relationships. Gilman covers so much ground, from female friendships to dealing with difficult people to finding our own paths to power. It's all there, and with her signature wit, of course.
It sounds like she offers a really refreshing perspective on what it means to be a woman today, encouraging us to challenge those expectations and just embrace who we are.
One thing that really stuck with me was this observation she made about women being the fashion police to each other. Like we've internalized all those crazy beauty standards, and then we turn around and enforce them on each other. Yeah.
It's ironic, isn't it? It's almost like we're afraid to let go of those standards because, I don't know, maybe it feels like we'd be betraying some unspoken code.
Right, and who does that really benefit? Gilman asks this really pointed question. How can we turn that critical energy into something more positive, something more supportive? Instead of focusing on flaws, what if we celebrated each other's strengths?
That's a powerful idea. Imagine feeling uplifted and encouraged by other women instead of judged and scrutinized. What a shift that would be.
She's not just talking about it theoretically either. She gives some practical advice.
Yeah.
For example, she says we need to broaden our definition of beauty.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Beauty comes in all shapes and sizes, all styles. And it's not just about the superficial stuff. It's about appreciating the things that make each of us unique and special.
Totally. And she talks about giving each other the benefit of the doubt. I mean, we all make mistakes. We all have things we're struggling with. So instead of jumping to conclusions, what if we tried to be more understanding?
It's about having compassion, both for ourselves and for each other. You never really know what someone else is going through, so offering support instead of judgment, that can make all the difference.
Exactly. And she really emphasizes the power of female friendships. She even talks about creating these more formal networks and support systems for women, kind of like those old boys clubs that men have.
That's a great idea. Having that built-in support system of women who understand what you're going through, that can be so valuable. Imagine what we could accomplish if we really supported each other in achieving our goals.
Speaking of support, remember how we were talking about learning from men? Specifically, the things they don't do, like not sweating the small stuff, not getting caught up in things that don't really matter.
Yeah, she was talking about how men often don't obsess over body image or get lost in emotional details the same way women tend to.
Exactly. And she takes that same idea and applies it to other areas of life. Sometimes we get so focused on trying to control every little thing, every detail. But maybe there's a lesson in letting go a little bit, trusting the process and focusing our energy on what really matters.
It's finding that balance, right? Being thoughtful and deliberate, but also knowing when to surrender to the things you can't control.
And here's where Gilman really gets interesting. She talks about PMS, but not in the way you might think. She actually suggests that women can use PMS as a force for positive change.
Now, that's a new one. I'm curious to hear how she suggests we do that.
She calls it estrogen activism or progesterone power. It's about taking all that intensity, all those emotions that come with PMS, and channeling them into something productive.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed by those emotions, we can use them to make a difference.
Exactly. She suggests things like writing to your representatives about issues you care about, attending protests, donating to PCAT forums, causes you support.
It's like turning that perceived weakness into a strength, using those feelings that are often ignored or dismissed to actually create change.
And she argues that PMS actually gives us this surge of energy and a heightened sense of urgency. So why not put that to good use?
It's brilliant. It's about reframing the way we think about those hormonal shifts and empowering women to use their voices.
And she also challenges this idea that women should always be polite and agreeable. She says sometimes a little righteous anger is exactly what's needed to shake things up and get things done.
It's about rejecting that pressure to be nice all the time and recognizing that anger, when used appropriately, can be a powerful motivator.
And speaking of challenging conventions, Gilman tackles some of the more taboo aspects of female sexuality, like masturbation. She points out that society often shames women for exploring their own bodies and pleasure, but she argues that it's a perfectly healthy and natural part of being human for both men and women.
It's about time someone addressed this openly. It's ridiculous that women are still made to feel ashamed of their sexuality.
Right. Gilman encourages us to embrace our sexuality without shame or guilt. It's about reclaiming our pleasure and our right to experience it.
It's about owning our sexuality and seeing it as a healthy and natural part of who we are.
Now, Gilman also has some refreshingly honest advice about dating. She acknowledges that it can be frustrating and challenging, but she encourages women to approach it with a more pragmatic perspective.
What kind of advice does she give? It can be a tough world out there.
Well, she has this great line, "Abandon all hope and kiss expectations goodbye."
That sounds a little bleak, doesn't it? But I have a feeling there's more to it than that.
Oh, definitely. She's not saying we should be cynical or give up on finding love. It's about being realistic and not getting so emotionally invested at every date. It's about protecting ourselves from disappointment and heartbreak.
So it's about going into dating with a clear head and not getting caught up in the fantasy of it all.
Exactly. She says we should view dating as a process of elimination, a way to weed out the people who aren't right for us and figure out what we really want in a partner.
It's about using dating as a learning experience, not just a quest to find the one.
And she's all about finding the humor in the process. Embrace those awkward moments, the bad dates, the cringeworthy encounters. Share those stories with your friends.
Oh yeah, there's nothing like a good laugh with your girlfriends about those dating mishaps. It helps you realize you're not alone.
She even says we should view bad dates as entertainment.
It's all about perspective. Instead of seeing them as failures, we can see them as funny anecdotes to share later.
She makes this funny observation. The real purpose of a date is so that we can tell our girlfriends about it the next day.
So true. It's like the main event is the debrief with your friends.
And she also talks about the importance of closure, even if it means swallowing your pride and calling a guy who's been less than gentlemanly.
Sometimes you just need those answers, right? Even if it's uncomfortable.
She says that sometimes we need to hear those no's loud and clear so we can move on. Otherwise, we're just left with doubts and unanswered questions.
It's about giving ourselves permission to seek closure. Sometimes we have to be our own advocates.
Gilman argues that a little short-term humiliation can actually be empowering in the long run because it helps you break free from the fantasy and move on to better things.
It's a good reminder that we deserve respect, even in the often messy world of dating.
Now, remember that idea about how straight couples might actually envy gay couples. Gilman comes back to that and suggests there's a lot we can learn from observing those relationships.
That's an interesting idea. It makes you realize that maybe there are other ways of doing things, other models for relationships that we haven't even considered.
She argues that gay couples often have a more balanced dynamic because they're not stuck in those traditional gender roles. They have more freedom to decide who does what based on what works for them, not on what society dictates.
When you think about it, it makes sense. Why should we be limited by those outdated ideas about who should do what?
Exactly. And she suggests that straight people might secretly envy the freedom and equality that often exists in those relationships.
It's definitely thought-provoking. It challenges us to question those assumptions we have about how relationships should be.
She even goes as far as to say that watching gay couples interact might make straight people question their own dynamics. Like, hey, why are we doing things this way?
It's about expanding our perspectives and recognizing that there's no one right way to be in a relationship.
We've only just scratched the surface of all the great stuff Gilman has to say. Kiss My Tiara is such a rich and insightful book.
It sounds like it's packed with those aha moments that make you see things in a new light. And it sounds like she does it with a lot of humor and wit, which is always a bonus.
Absolutely. It's a really enjoyable read. So after spending all this time with Gilman's work, it really hits you how much of the pressure we feel as women is, well, self-inflicted. We're often our own worst critics, aren't we?
Absolutely. It's like we take all those societal messages and turn them inwards. It creates this whole cycle of self-doubt.
Gilman's really upfront about that. She says we need to, give ourselves permission to be imperfect, embrace those flaws, and stop comparing ourselves to everyone else. Easier said than done, though.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a challenge, but it's so important. It's about recognizing your own worth no matter what. Your appearance, your achievements, your relationship status, none of that defines you.
Right. It's about self-acceptance. She talks about how women need to support each other in that journey. Instead of being the fashion police, constantly judging each other, what if we celebrated each other's strengths?
Imagine that. A world where women actually build each other up instead of tearing each other down. Think of what we could accomplish with that kind of energy.
It's a powerful thought. And it's not just about body image. Gilman's whole book is about embracing our power and using it for good. We have the power to choose the kind of life we want, the kind of partner we want. We can define our own success.
It's about recognizing that we're not just passive bystanders. We have a choice in how we respond to the world around us. We can question those messages that tell us who we should be and what we should do.
She encourages us to take risks, to step outside our comfort zones, and to never underestimate the impact we can have.
And it's not always going to be easy. Life's messy, right? There's heartbreak and disappointment. But she reminds us that those experiences can make us stronger and more resilient.
And we don't have to go it alone. We have each other,
Yeah.
and there's so much power in collective action.
Absolutely. Female solidarity. It's about amplifying each other's voices, supporting each other's dreams. Imagine what we could create if we worked together like that.
So I guess my question for you is, after diving into Kiss My Tiara with me, what are you taking away from it? What really resonated with you?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that true empowerment starts from within. It's about cultivating self-love, recognizing your own strengths, and using them to make a positive impact on the world.
I love that. It reminds me of something else she said. Don't wait for permission. Give it to yourself.
Wow, that's powerful. It's a call to action, isn't it? It's like, stop waiting for someone else to tell you it's okay to be who you are and go after what you want.
Exactly. Well, this has been another fascinating deep dive. Thanks for joining me.
The pleasure's all mine. Gilman's work is so thought-provoking and insightful. It's really inspiring.
And I think it's a great reminder that we all have a tiara to wear in our own way. So go out there and embrace your power.
And remember, the most important crown is the one you build for yourself.
This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for listening.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep challenging the world around you.
And one last thought to leave you with. If Gilman were to ask you, what tiara are you wearing? How would you answer? What crown have you built for yourself? What legacy are you creating?